Hi guys, it's Jennibellie. Today I'm going to show you how to make paper beads. It has been one of my it's been the most requested video for the last couple of years now at least. So I'm finally doing it. I haven't done it before because there's just too many out there already and I didn't just want to do the same thing. So how I'm going to make this a bit different is I'm going to make this a fancy bead tutorial. So what that means is I'm going to show how to make different sizes, different shapes, and then I'll also do a section showing you how to embellish them differently. So it's going to be 3 different sections. The first one is just going to be a bog standard how to make a paper bead tutorial, and you can leave it at that if you want. The second section I'm going to show you how to use different kinds of paper or shaped paper to make different kinds of beads, different shapes and things. And then the third one will be different ways to really jazz up your beads using embellishments and other things like that. So yeah, it should be fun. The things you're going to need are obviously the first thing that we're going to need to make a paper bead is paper, and I keep project files, as you've probably seen before, for each kind of project, and this is my paper beads one where I keep different kind of papers and things for that. Now what we're going to do to make a paper bead is first off make a strip like this. And I've just got this pat of paper here. As you can see, I've already started on this end. So what I will do is I'll go from this end to show you how I start them. Now sometimes I see people creating basically a template where they will line up and draw across the page all the way up, and to be honest, to me that's just too much effort. So what I do, say we're going to make an inch thick paper bead, what I first do is put my paper at about the 1/2 inch line at the top, and then I level it up to the bottom where it's practically got nothing left. So 1/2 inch at the top, hardly anything at the bottom, score that down, and then that takes off the straight edge. What I then do is take this bottom end down to 1 inch on the cutter and put it up to nothing at the top. So what that gives us is a 1 inch base, which is going to be the width of our bead, the height of our bead rather, and then down to the point which will be exactly in the middle of your bead. Now that to me is the simplest way to do it. What I will then do is take this top half to the 1 inch point and the bottom down to nothing, and that again gives us the same result, and I find that the easiest way. You can of course, if you want to, measure up on each one. I just prefer the quickness and the ease of going 1 inch to nothing, 1 inch to nothing, 1 inch to nothing, or whatever measurements you want. You can adapt it as you want, and I'll talk more about that in the next section. Okay, so now you've got your paper bead strips, you want to find something to roll your beads with. Now the bog standard tool for doing it is a cocktail stick or toothpicks. Some people call them toothpicks, doesn't matter, whatever you call them. And then there are more jazzier bead making tools such as this one, which I got off of eBay for a couple of pounds. Just type in paper bead roller on eBay and they'll come up all over the place. Now I do recommend getting one of these because it does limit the labour a little bit. It does make it easier, but it doesn't limit it, take it away completely. These are handmade beads. You can get fancier rollers than this, such as this one. I got this one off of Etsy. Again, just type in paper bead roller and this seller will probably come up. It's paper bead lady or paper bead girl or something like that that sells these. And these ones are supposed to be even better because you roll it here by holding the base and just rolling this bit with your fingers, and then at the end you can push this off at the end. So it's a bit jazzier than this one. To be honest, no tool is going to take away the labour of making a handmade paper bead 100%, unless you get one of those really fancy jancy full machines that does the whole work for you. And I don't really see the point of them, to be honest, because these are supposed to be handmade. But at the same time, whatever takes your fancy. So you can just use something that you already have in the house. You don't have to go out and buy any of this stuff, and I'll show you how to make it with both ways. So first off, with the cocktail stick, you just want to get the cocktail stick on the end and just roll the end of the paper a bit, just to make it curl, so that it's easier to start rolling your bead. Just makes it easier for me. You know, you might find your own ways to make it easier for you. Now, some people like to roll their beads this way, and some people like to roll their beads this way towards them. I'm kind of happy with both ways. I think that this way is sometimes easier to see how to match up your lines, but this way at the same time, I think I do all of them, to be honest. Sometimes I even just do this and wrap it around that way. You know, so the biggest thing for me when making the beads is I like to have both of my sides level. You see what I mean? I like to keep them in line. Some people aren't bothered about that. It makes them, you know, more rustic if you don't want to bother with that. I kind of like them being level though. That's just personal preference. You do it how you want to do it. So I keep them in check as I go along. One of the big things I like about my beads though is I like to have this end bit bang in the middle. I like to have it directly like that in the middle. So once you get to the end, take your glue, just a wet glue, and just smooth it down and use the rest of any glue. I used a little bit too much there, but use the excess just to wrap around your bead, just to seal it off, because I've done one here before for you, because what happens if you don't, it's very easy for them to move like this. So this is why you want glue on it or glaze. You can put the minimum amount of glue on it now if you want, but then you will have to glaze it. Otherwise they'll just be doing this. Can you see? So yeah, put a bit of glue on it. Seal it off first off, that's what I do to make sure that it's sealed, and then later on I glaze the whole thing. So with this one, what there is a little groove in here where you put the paper in the first place, and basically that takes away the labour of having to roll the paper. It does that for you. And I do find this easier, sorry I've got glue on my fingers, just find it easier to then just roll the bead without having to worry about it being stuck to the cocktail stick, because it can come loose. You have to be very tight with the cocktail stick to make sure it stays in place and doesn't unravel, because if it unravels a little bit then the integrity of the bead goes. And this one does help kind of keep it just in check. You see how much easier it is to roll it? But it doesn't take away the labour, whoops, doesn't take away the labour 100%. You still have to, you know, do the work. So a bit of glue on the end, roll it around until all the glue's gone and it's not going to unravel, and then take it off. So that is how you make your basic paper bead. Show you how to make these tube beads. Well, I call them tube beads. It's pretty obvious why I call them a tube, but they're really nice, solid, chunky beads. Obviously the fatter ones come with using thicker or longer paper as per the rule. So all you need for this one is just a simple, straightforward strip of paper, one end exactly the same width as the other. And as a crafter, you just tend to cut off strips in bits and pieces in different projects. So what I do is keep a little pouch next to me full of the little scraps, just to create beads with as and when I want them. So it's the same rule as before. You just begin rolling it up and making sure the edges match. But rather than it being a staggered edge, such as this one, you want to make the edges flush together, so don't let one overlap the other side. Keep them level pegging as you go along. In fact, even if you have one of these tools, what you can do is put it up down to here and keep that going. Use that as a kind of a marker Okay, and then on these ones what I do is I glue about 1/2 inch worth in, and I go right up pretty much the edges of them all, and I roll it round and pinch it in place. If you use thick paper on this one, I suggest holding it maybe a little longer, because thick paper is more likely to unravel on you rather than thinner paper. And there you have your tube bead. Okay, next I'm going to show you a pointy-ended one, where it's basically a combination of the last two that I've shown you. So it's kind of where that meets that, it becomes this. So all it is basically is, with the shape of the paper, it is obviously going to be a combination of the two as well. So rather than it being ridiculously angled like this side or very flush like this side, you want it a little bit in between. So this already has a bit of an edge to it, so if I angle it a little bit like this, I've got a little bit of a taper. One side is a little bit fatter than the other, and that will give us this effect, the pointy effect with our beads. So take the fat end. It's going to be quite a large bead because I didn't measure, I just cut it. But it's exactly the same thing as before. You just keep both sides kind of level as you carry on rolling. Same with the other one, the last one. I put on glue across all of the edges, roll it and pinch it and keep it there for a little while. And then just roll it around. If you ever get any glue like that when you move it, just rub it off before it dries, and that'll be fine. Alright, so now I'm going to show you how to make a ball type bead, where it is the same, looks the same that way as what it does that way. So you roll it around and it's like a ball. This one I made out of recycling, so there's caramel on it, which I quite like. So this one, it might take you a few attempts, I'm going to admit, to get this one down, because it's kind of an experiment between the width versus the length. So this is quite a thick piece of paper, and that also is going to be taken into account. Remember, the thickness of the paper also determines the thickness of the bead. So because this isn't the longest strip of paper, I've just grabbed it out of my scraps. I can't make it a fat bead. So say if I was to do it that big, I'd end up with a bead that looks like that rather than a bead that looks like this. So I need to kind of keep it a bit shorter to get the ratio in line, and I'm just going to eyeball this, and the more you do, the better you will get at eyeballing it as well. I'm going to guesstimate about there should be okay. Oh, it just moved. Okay, let me do the other side. That's the difficulty with runners sometimes. You need to hold them straight. There we go. So it doesn't move under your fingers. Okay. So there, look, it was a little bit thinner than what I intended it to be. So it's the same as all the others when you roll this bead. Just keep it level between the two sides. And that's a trick actually, I haven't shown you yet. If when you're rolling it and it goes, let me go over to one edge like that, I mean it's not going to go off that far, but just in case, just loosen up a little bit and pull it back into shape. And these small ones are actually kind of most difficult to roll in a way because they have got less room. They move a lot more because there's less space that they've got, less spatial area. Can't think of the word I'm looking for. So put a bit of glue on the end. Again, have enough to go over the edges. See, this is what thick paper does. It lifts up. So you need to really make sure that the thicker the paper is, the more secure it is before you pull it off of your cocktail stick or off of your roller. So that's kind of a bead. If I wanted to really get it exact, I would experiment a little bit and then keep the measurements. So say if it's maybe 7mm across or 1 centimetre across, I would write down those measurements so that for future use I could make all my beads the same. But just as a glance, that's how you make a ball paper bead. Okay, so next I'm going to show you one step up from a ball bead and a saucer bead. It's essentially a ball bead, but that's just expanded a bit so that it's fatter and wider. Fatter that way, wider that way. And they are rather tricky, I have to tell you this in advance. They're not the easiest of the beads to do, so I wouldn't start off on this one. But what you need to make it is a very long strip that's small this side and going down to nothing this side. And some people, what they do is take long pieces of paper, say. So you take long pieces of paper and then they cut down to this side, and on this side they take that measurement and stick that up here and cut that down and stick that to there. So stick a load of strips together to make a really long piece of paper to roll. Now the difficulty is, of course, that the longer it is, the most unlikely it will be that you can put it through a machine to cut or something. So what I have done myself is I have created myself a saucer bead template out of quite thick card and printed that out, and that was A3, which for the people in the US is 2 ledger paper sizes. So this one here is not going to create the fattest saucer bead, but I'll show you what this one does first, and then I will show you how I make a really fat one. So you're doing the same as normal. You're rolling, 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 and of course, because the surface area on this one again isn't very wide, but you're creating an even fatter bead, it becomes even more unstable than the ball beads. So you really have to watch out for it. In fact, halfway through, it might, if you have a fat one, it might be better to put some glue on halfway through the process to make sure it really stays put and doesn't move on you. So roll that up, take it off, and that's more of a saucer shape. Now to get a really fat saucer, what I do is I take 2 of my strips and back them up back to back. Now I'll tell you the measurements on this. I don't think this is very fat at all. These are 1 centimetre by about, definitely over 30 centimetres. 30 centimetres to here. Then another 11, so about 41 centimetres by 1 centimetre is my strips. But again, they don't make the fattest one on their own, so just be aware of that. And this is with really thick paper as well. Now I can barely get the 2 of them through this, so I have to wiggle it about a bit to do the job. See what a girl goes through to be determined with her paper beads? So, okay, try and keep them together as you go around. And now I am going to put some extra glue on, as I said, because it just makes the whole thing easier to stay together. Can you see how much fatter it is though, just with doubling up your strips? But it does make it twice as unstable, so just be aware. As I said, I wouldn't recommend this bead for people that are only just starting. Do some of the easier ones first, because this will frustrate you if you start off on this one. So don't leave any things in the comments blaming me. I warned you. Warned you straight out right. Oh no! Now that is frustrating. You can always pull a paper bead back though. I'm not going to edit this video to not show you mistakes. Because yeah, they can happen. And generally they'll happen with me when the camera's rolling as not, because I feel under pressure, but I'm still not going to edit them out. I'm going to hold them there for a minute. Get rid of the glue off of my fingers, just so that it sets in, because I want to get rid of the glue off of this as well. And you can't do that if it wasn't stable. So be careful taking it off of the machine. And there is your saucer bead. Okay, so now I'm going to show you how to make some triangle beads. Here are some examples. So just a little triangle, they stand up. So they're basically half of the bead that I showed you how to make in the beginning. Now in the beginning, do you remember that strip that I first cut off that has the straight edge to it and then the angled edge? And I cut that off to make these beads easier. Now you can turn this is basically the shape of the paper that you will need to make a triangle. So you can turn this into a triangle, but you can also turn this into one of these. So I'll show you both ways. Basically it's all in the making sure that you keep the lines the same as usual for this one. So keep the width either side the same as you turn it around. Whoops. And as you can see, that will create another one of those beads. I've not done it as perfectly as what I would if I was doing it normally, but you get the idea. Now to turn it into a triangle, what you need to do is stay true to the straight edge. So what I mean by that is put it in the machine or on your cocktail stick, and actually I think that side's the straight edge, isn't it? Yep. So you need to just keep this straight edge down the bottom lined up. You can actually, if you've got one of these tools, you can actually line it up against the bottom edge a lot easier. Your glue, stick some glue on and just roll it around. Now, oh dear. Yeah, so what happens is it is, as you just saw, not as stable as the other one, so you have to be careful when you're taking it off, but because it does move, you can, as I've just done with my fingers, stick it back into place, and that is your cone / triangle bead. And I call it the double bead. I think it's pretty obvious why I call it the double bead. Looks like a monkey nut, you know, a peanut, or maybe a curvy lady, figure eight lady. I really like the look of these beads, they're my most favourite, but again, I wouldn't recommend them for beginners. Try a few paper beads first and see how you go, and then progress onto this kind of stuff. because essentially I'm saying it's a double bead, but it is actually a double bead. You're going to have to roll 2 beads in one. So how you create the bead template is, I've chosen a thick piece of card for it. I probably shouldn't have done, but to show you, but oh well. So what you want to do is take a strip of paper and you want to fold it in the middle. And then under the trimmer you want to trim off part of this edge. You don't want to trim it all, because if you go right to the end, then what will happen is you won't have a hinge in the middle. So just grab your cutter, and I just eyeball what I think at the time. So don't do that and cut off all the way. Keep a little bit in, tucked under and safe, so that you've got this to be the hinge. Oh, it moved. Moved again, no. It's pretty okay though. What you need is for these two sections to kind of be the same width. So as long as that's done, I'm happy. Okay, so put it around your cocktail stick or in your little tool, and then begin rolling. And again, for the beginning section, you want to just make sure that none of the edges overlap, and then you want to roll one end first. So essentially you are doing 2 beads in one, and keep it in line like usual. I recommend doing the outside one first. And then do the inner one. Because otherwise you've got this flapping around while you're trying to roll your bead. I've got dirty hands as I'm in. Okay. I'm not happy how that's just gone. Makeshift repair. Makeshift repair. So there we go. I can sort that out. But that's how you make a double bead. Right guys, before I get on to the pretty decorating part, I just want to go through glazing, because I get asked a lot about glazes. So the first up, the one that I use is diamond glaze. There are others out there, but I like this one because it's mixable. You can mix it with water and make it go a little bit further if you want to. Then what you will need is a drying rack to put cocktail sticks in, so you're also going to need cocktail sticks. And the easiest thing to use is polystyrene. I just have this heart that I've decoupaged just to make it a bit prettier, but does the job, really easy. So any packaging that you have, that polystyrene will work fine for that. And what I've got here, just to make it easier for storage I guess, is this clay slab that I just, it's easy peasy, just pat it out into a large space and then just poke holes in it, and it works quite well. So that's that. And how I set up my diamond glaze is I use this tray that's just a piece of old packaging and this brush, and I keep this brush specifically for glazing. I don't use my acrylic brushes or anything, and the brush that I use for it, it's very thick, so can you see how it's spreading? It's a very soft brush, so it's spread, the bristles spread very wide, and that is useful when you're glazing a bead because it stretches across that area versus a brush that is hard. So that's what I prefer. Now I do get asked a lot about putting your glaze into a nail varnish container, because the way I understand it, I think it's on a tutorial or something. So let me just show you the difference in the actual brush. This is a good brand of nail polish as well, but it is designed to be neat for your nails, so it's not going to spread out and go over a whole load of distance. But it is a good idea, you know, if you want to take them on holiday or something. But generally I would use a brush that's going to do the work for you, to be honest, because when you've done it, you're going to get addicted to making beads pretty much. If you're like me, you'll get addicted to making them, and then the glazing is the bit that you really have to do but isn't always the fun bit. So I use that brush because it just helps me out doing it quickly. I also get asked a lot about if you can use nail polish on your beads, particularly on my aluminium foil bead tutorial. I get asked that pretty much every week. Now, yes, you can. The thing is, if you're going to ask me, can you use something, I'm always going to say yes, you can. I'm always going to say use whatever you've got, blah 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 blah. But I don't know how nail polish is going to react a few years down the line, and you won't until you've used it. Just as a warning, throw it out there. It might flaky, it might chip, I don't know. But that's just as a warning. And plus, my nail polish, you know, is quite expensive. That is 6 times the size. Diamond Glaze is 6 times the size and costs a lot less. That cost me £5.65, and that is, I think this top coat is about £12. So I don't want to use my nice nail polish for it, to be honest. I want to use Diamond Glaze. So there we go. That's my opinion on that bit. But if that's what you have, then yeah, go for it. So just with the glaze, this glaze that I've poured out here, we'll do quite a few. As I say, I do a bunch together just to get the job done. And then just make sure you roll it around as you go to get all your bits on. If it's a long bead, you can go this way, make sure, but I would say make sure you take it right to the ends because you want them fully protected. What this is going to do is make sure that they are water resistant. Paper beads are never going to be 100% waterproof because they are made out of paper, but if you want them to be super strong, it makes them very strong, very hard, and it will also stop them being damaged instantly by water. So if you want to, add a couple of coats on them. Diamond Glaze, another reason why I like it is because it dries really quickly, but what I do is I'll still leave it on the rack to dry overnight, and then I will pop it in my bead box just to make 100% sure that my beads aren't going to stick together. Yay! We're on to my favourite bit, the decorating. Okay, so this is my fun bead box. This is beads that I've just made for the sake of making them, that I can use on any project for anything, and I've kind of grouped them together in relevant kind of pieces. I'll show you also some of the storage that I have. I have these kind of little tins that I keep for particular projects, so beads I can't just use on anything, things that are designed for a particular project. I keep them in separate storage containers. But this one, I know it's full now and I have started another one, but this one is my my favourite box, my handmade bead box. Now, the number one thing that I do to decorate my beads without really me having to try any, as you can probably tell here, is I use patterned papers. Now, the rule of thumb I've found with patterned papers is ones that I don't particularly like the patterns of and don't like using for other things, I really like as beads. Now, as you've probably seen in my project folder, the one that I was using for the first section as well, is a striped pattern. Now, I'll give you a quick tip, is I don't particularly like striped patterns, using them so much, but I really like them for beads because if you go this way in opposition, to the stripes themselves, what you will get, as you've probably seen on this one, is a lovely gradient effect where you will get all the different spectrums, all the different colours of the stripes. If you go in parallel with it, so if you went down this way, cutting your bead, you would probably only get little hints at it, or even you could stay on the whole line, whole side of it could be white. So you're not really using the maximum pattern that you could, to its maximum ability. So that's a tip with pattern papers, is have a look at the papers themselves and see which way you cut it will give you the maximum amount of interest on your bead. So other ways that I decorate the paper before, I even come to roll it, is just using scraps of paint paper. So these are just my waste paint paper just rolled up, and I think that bead particularly is a really summery bead. Now I, like everybody, have particular quirks that I really like to do to my beads to jazz them up. And as you probably can see here, on the ends I like to add, on some of them, not all of them, but particularly on my tube beads, I like to add some paint or iridescent glue, something to give it a little bit of extra oomph to the ends. And also with these ones, I think it's particularly important to seal them off at the ends. So what I do for that is just grab a cocktail stick, grab a bead, and what I like using is some metallic paint, and it's really simple. Just stick your cocktail stick in your holder, grab your bead and just stick it into the lid. You don't need to even you know, do anything particularly jazzy with it. Just stick it in the lid. If the paint goes over the hole, just blow it and the paint, you know, the bubble will disperse, and then just stick it on. Obviously paint sign pointing up, and that is probably why as you can see on my cocktail sticks there's a load of paint, because as it goes down it might hit the cocktail stick like that. Doesn't matter, still going to be usable. But that's what I really like doing with my beads. So do all one top side first, flip them over, and then do the other side. And I think that's a really nice way to really finish off a bead and take it to the extra level. Now another way you can decorate your bead is via decorating it via the edges. So this here is if you colour your edges before you roll it. So across your paper you just get, this marker isn't going to colour it because it's white, but you get what I mean. You just take your marker and you go across the edge of your paper once you've cut it, and as you roll it up you'll have funny colours on the end. Now the number one thing I think I do, a trick that I'm going to share with you now that I haven't seen anybody else do with beads, is I use foils. So I'll show you here that I just think these look absolutely beautiful. It's my favourite thing to use on them. And foiling, it has come into the crafting industry the last few years, maybe 10 years or so, I don't know. But what I've used with my foils here, all these and these three ones here are foil, and this one as well actually, just in the middle, just a stripe. My foil is actually from when I was a teenager, probably about 13 or 14, and I used to use it for nail art. So these are my old nail foils. They're in these small strips. If you buy them nowadays, they go in much longer strips for crafting. But these were just designed for your nails, so they weren't very long because you just need to stick them, you know, on your nails. So these are the ones that I particularly favour using on them. They're iridescent ones, really shiny, and I really like them. Now what will happen with them is that these particular beads that I like using with them, they're made out of a really high grade artist paper, so it's a really thick paper, which means that the staggered, you know, staggeration, grading, whatever, is quite high. It's kind of like a doorstep. I can run my nail across it and I can feel the grooves in it here. And so what happens is you get only part of the glue. How you apply these is with the glue. This is in a pen, but you can get them just in bottles as well. And it's a blue glue that you apply and then wait for it to go clear, which is the hardest part, I have to admit, because you've got to have patience for that. But then once it goes clear, you put on your foil, and it needs glazing, but then this is what it looks like. And I really like the fact that it's got light lines in it. I think that adds to the character of the bead. If you wanted to be absolutely perfect with it, then I think you would need to use a bead that is, these are made out of the same length paper, for instance, Okay, so this is scrapbooking paper, like the other striped paper that I've just shown you. This is the artist paper. It's the same length that created the bead, you know. So that shows you the difference between a thin paper and a thick paper. So if you wanted this to be more even, it would probably be best on a thinner paper. Another thing that I've done is, this is a different kind of foil. These are gilding flakes. So just something a little different, just to add a little extra interest. And the other thing that I like doing a lot is glitter. And it's so super simple to use glitter on your beads. Just use it for your glaze, and something that's really simple to use for it is Mod Podge Sparkle. You can use glitter glues. If I show you, I have used glitter glues. I've got some up here. But when you use them, this is with some Tim Holtz Distress glue, but when you use them it kind of makes them chunky and bitty, and I don't like that. I prefer the bead not to have like any sharp bits on it, so I just use glitter that is just gonna be really easy to brush on. That's just one coat of Mod Podge and it gives really nice iridescent effect. So let's just show you the difference between these beads. Are quite similar in how they've been made, but here you have the ends being done and there you have the glitter, and I think they just give very different effects, but equally pretty. And then the final way I think that's quite unique to what I do is I put thread on them as well. So here you go. That is when you are glazing them. What I do is I use little extra pieces of thread from bits and pieces that I use. It's got to be quite thin thread. Here's the red one. And you just glaze it first. You're going to get your fingers a little bit sticky, but I think it's worth it. So you glaze it first, and then put in the thread, wrap it round, and then glaze over it again. And it tends to stay in place when you're glazing as well, so you don't need to worry about waiting for it to dry and then glazing it again. You can do it all in one go, so that's quite good. And I really like the effect, particularly of my white iridescent thread. I just think that's really pretty. The final thing I'm going to show you is making your own artwork beads. So rolling up your bead on just a plain strip of white paper such as this, and then on the last section of your bead draw some artwork, roll it up, and you have some unique, one-of-a-kind artwork beads, which I'm thinking I might do a few for my shop, because I do like doing them. I find them fun. So those are my tips for making really fun, unique beads. I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial. Much love everybody, and I'll see you next time. Bye!